Today I'm talking about what Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, and his successor Brigham Young taught the church about how God viewed slavery in the United States. Spoiler alert, if you think that they sided with the abolitionists, you may be in for a big, unpleasant surprise. The main point of my video today is to highlight yet another way we can verify that Joseph Smith and Brigham Young were indeed false prophets through examining their failed prophecies and teachings to the Mormon Church in regards to the abolition of slavery. Both men used their authority as prophets to the Latter-day Saints to teach slavery as the will of God. They taught that God actually wanted blacks to remain slaves in the South. Why? According to them, it was due to his curse and punishment upon their race. We have covered in the last video that Smith wrote new scriptures where he affirmed that blacks were cursed by God because they were the descendants of Cain and of Noah's son Ham. I will leave a link to that video at the end for those of you who have an interest in watching it. In that message, we said that although modern LDS leadership has disavowed Smith's and Young's teachings about why someone is born black, or at least they have an article in the church's website stating that, they have yet to deal with the fact that Smith gave the church false revelation and that his teachings about a dark skin being cursed by God have been canonized in LDS scriptures and are still currently there. Young also was teaching the same during sessions of the General Conference for the church. Therefore, they could hardly side with the abolitionists, who, in their view, were working against God and his divine decree to the black race. Both men predicted that the abolitionists would fail in their efforts to free the slave. Nevertheless, history proved them both wrong, and because of their failed teachings, the Bible proves them to be false prophets. To help us unpack what we will be examining about their teachings on this subject later, I think it is helpful if we refresh our memories about some basic facts of American history in regards to slavery and abolition, and the very courageous men and women who actively fought for it to become a reality. For the sake of time, I will only mention in quick highlights 4 people who committed their lives to see the end of slavery in the U.S., who were completely motivated by their profound Christian conviction in the words of Christ in the Bible, which propelled them to push forward, not counting the cost to themselves, which many times was great. The first one is William Lloyd Garrison. He was a Christian man, deeply convicted that slavery was a sin, because, as he put it, whatever there is a human being, I see God-given rights inherent in that being, whatever may be the sex or complexion. Just a year after Joseph Smith published new scripture to the LDS, writing about the skin of blackness being divinely cursed in the Book of Mormon, Garrison, on January 1st of 1831, began a pro-abolition newspaper which he named The Liberator, dedicated to bring awareness to the evils of slavery and seeking to end it. Although The Liberator was a small paper with low circulation, it had great significance and impact to the cause. Garrison's uncompromising call for immediate and uncompensated emancipation marked the beginning of a radical movement to abolish slavery and transform American society. John J. Chapman attributes Garrison's determination to this. The source of Garrison's power was the Bible. From his earliest days, he read the Bible constantly and prayed constantly. It was with this fire that he started his conflagration. Frederick Douglass is known to be America's foremost black abolitionist. Born a slave, he escaped in 1838 when he was just 21 years old. He met William Garrison, who, realizing his natural gift of oratory, knew how invaluable Douglass would be for the cause and recruited him. They began to work and to travel together to speak on the horrors of slavery, which Douglass had naturally experienced firsthand. He was also a gifted writer, and in 1847 he started his own newspaper, the North Star, very influential in the anti-slavery effort. About slavery, he stated, "No man can put a chain about the ankle of his fellow man without at last finding the other end fastened about his own neck." John Brown was born to Christian parents. His dad was an ardent abolitionist. John had a deep belief that slavery was wrong, and it was only solidified when, while traveling in Michigan, when he was 12, he witnessed another boy, a slave boy, being beaten. That haunted him and shaped his resolution as a firm abolitionist. Brown took part in the Underground Railroad, gave land to free slaves, and established the League of the Gideonites, a group formed to protect slaves from slave bounty hunters. He believed in using violent means to end slavery if necessary. In 1859, he led 21 men on a raid of the Federal Ferry in Virginia, holding dozens of men hostage with the plan of inspiring a slave insurrection. He was defeated by military forces commanded by General Robert E. Lee, subsequently tried for treason, found guilty, and executed. Like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman escaped slavery in 1849 to become a leading abolitionist. She used one of the Underground Railroad routes to escape from a plantation in Maryland, covering about 90 miles to Pennsylvania and freedom. The Underground Railroad was a network of regular people, farmers, business owners, and ministers, blacks as well as whites, who, united in their hatred of slavery, provided shelter and aid to fugitive slaves. There were several routes to the north being used, and people hid them in their own houses, in churches, and schoolhouses. Because of the Fugitive Slave Acts, this activity was very dangerous, prosecutable by law, and placing one in the direct path of slave bounty hunters. Instead of staying in safety in the north, Harriet believed that she had a clear call from God to keep on going back to the south to rescue others. She became the most notorious conductor in the Underground Railroad, leading hundreds of slaves to freedom, risking her life in multiple occasions, and earning the nickname Moses. She deeply believed that God guided her and attributed to him both her protection and her success in the enterprise. So, on one hand, while we have these powerful examples of Christian abolitionists, what was Joseph Smith teaching as the Mormon prophet? The LDS essay, Slavery and Abolition, found in the church's website, tells us that in 1832, Latter-day Saints who had settled in Missouri were attacked by their neighbors, who accused them of tampering with our slaves and endeavoring to sow dissensions and raise seditions among them. The next year, concerns that free black saints would gather to Missouri was the spark that ignited further violence against the saints and led to their expulsion from Jackson County. In the mid-1830s, the saints tried to distance themselves from the controversy over slavery. Missionaries were instructed not to teach enslaved men and women without the permission of their masters. The church's newspaper published several articles critical of the growing abolitionist movement. It also states that after the saints had been driven from Missouri and had settled in Illinois, however, Joseph Smith gradually became more outspoken in his opposition to slavery. This last sentence is written in a way to make us think that perhaps he did not speak up before for fear of retribution, which in itself is contradictory to the role of a prophet in the Bible. But the evidence we have in LDS history itself is that he was in favor of slavery and was very opposed to abolishing it. So when we read in the fourth paragraph of the Race and the Priesthood essay that toward the end of his life, church founder Joseph Smith openly opposed slavery, that may be so, but during most of his life he didn't, like many other people also. But the problem here is that he authored new scripture specifying the black skin and ancestry as marked by God's curse and their plight therefore as being justly deserved. It was false revelation. So every time devoted LDS members open their scriptures and read about it there, they are being taught a false teaching, which the church says it has disavowed. But again, why is it that if disavowed, they remain in the LDS canon? Let's now look at some of the documented statements from Smith and Young about slavery and their feelings towards abolitionists. When the Mormons left New York to settle in Independence, Missouri in the early 1830s, they made local residents nervous, assuming that they would be anti-slavery. We would argue that it was when Joseph Smith began to compromise with his new neighbors and seeing how strong the institution of slavery was, he must have felt pretty safe to begin writing about the cursed skin of blackness as a whole new doctrine in his new scriptures. An article in the church's Evening and Morning Star paper entitled "Free People of Color" said the following: having learned with regret that an article entitled "Free People of Color" in the last number of the Star has been misunderstood, we feel duty-bound to state in this extra that our intention was not only to stop free people of color from emigrating to this state, but to prevent them from being admitted as members of the church. On April of 1836, Joseph wrote an article that was published in the Messenger and Advocate to diffuse any renewed suspicions of the local residents about which side the Mormons were on. In it, he clearly shows to be in favor of slavery and very opposed to the abolitionists, because he was teaching all those theories and folklore of the curse on blacks as if they were truly God's decree. He wrote, "I fear that the sound might go out that an abolitionist had held forth several times to this community. I am aware that many who profess to preach the gospel complain against their brethren of the same faith who reside in the South and are ready to withdraw the hand of fellowship because they will not renounce the principle of slavery and raise their voice against everything of the kind. This must be a tender point, and one which should call for the candid reflections of all men, and more especially before they advance in an opposition calculated to lay waste to the fair states of the South, and let loose upon the world a community of people who might peradventure overrun our country and violate the most sacred principles of human society, chastity, and virtue. I do not believe that the people of the North have any more right to say that the South should not hold slaves than the South have to say the North shall. When I see persons in the free states signing documents against slavery, it is no less in my mind than an army of influence and a declaration of hostilities against the people of the South. After having expressed myself so freely upon this subject, I do not doubt, but those who have been forward raising their voices against the South will cry out against me as being unfeeling, unkind, and wholly unacquainted with the gospel of Christ. It is my privilege, then, to name certain passages from the Bible. The first mention we have of slavery is found in the Holy Bible. And so far from the prediction being averse to the mind of God, it remains as a last testament to the decrees of Jehovah, to the shame and confusion of all those who have cried out against the South, in consequence of holding the sons of Ham in servitude. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of God of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Trace the history of the world from this notable event down to this day, and you will find the fulfillment of this singular prophecy. I can say that the curse is not yet taken off from the sons of Canaan, neither will it be until it is affected by as great a power as caused it to come. And the people who interfere the least with the purposes of God in this matter will come under the least condemnation before him. And those who are determined to pursue a course which shows an opposition and a feverish restlessness against the decrees of the Lord will learn, when perhaps it is too late for their own good, that God can do his own work without the aid of those who are not dictated by his counsel. On another occasion, Joseph Smith made the comment that the Indians have greater cause to complain of the treatment of the whites than the Negroes or sons of Cain. And a year later he wrote, At 5 went to Mr. Soller's with Elders Hyde and Richards. Elder Hyde inquired of the situation of the Negro. I replied, They came into the world slaves, mentally and physically. Have I anything to do with the Negro? I would confine them by strict law to their own species and put them on a national equalization. When asked if Mormons were abolitionists, he answered, No, we do not believe in setting the Negroes free. Brigham Young just continued to teach the same things and adding his own contributions. He also taught slavery to be a divine institution and that the Civil War was not going to end slavery, which ended up being one of his failed prophecies. He said, Ham will continue to be servants of servants, as the Lord decreed, until the curse is removed. Will the present struggle free the slave? No, but they are now wasting the black race by thousands. Can you destroy the decrees of the Almighty? You cannot. Yet our Christian brethren think that they are going to overthrow the sentence of the Almighty upon the seed of Ham. You cannot do that, though they may kill them by thousands and tens of thousands. And the following statements are also his. They should be the servant of servants, and they will be until the curse is removed, and the abolitionists cannot help it, nor in the least alter that decree. The rank, rabid abolitionists, whom I call black-hearted Republicans, have set the whole national fabric on fire. The Negro is damned and is to serve his master till God removes the curse. Those are my views and consequently the views of all the saints on abolitionism. The descendants of Ham, besides a black skin, which has ever been a curse that has followed an apostate of the holy priesthood, as well as a black heart, have been servants of both Shem and Japheth, and the abolitionists are trying to make void the curse of God, but it will require more power than men possess to counteract the decrees of eternal wisdom. Another very known abolitionist was Horace Greeley, the owner and editor of a nationally read newspaper, the New York Tribune. On July of 1859, he famously interviewed President Brigham Young. He asked, "What is the position of your church with respect to slavery? We consider it of divine institution and not to be abolished until the curse pronounced on him shall have been removed from his descendants. Are there any slaves now held in this territory? There are. Do your territorial laws uphold slavery? Those laws are printed. You can read them for yourself. If slaves are brought here by those who own them in the States, we do not favor their escape from the service of those owners." Horace Greeley was dismayed that the Mormons did not seem to oppose slavery. Church historian B.H. Roberts. Mr. Greeley was disappointed in the lack of abolition sentiment in Salt Lake City, which he resented by saying at the banquet given in his honor, "I have not heard tonight, and I think I have never heard from the lips of the journals of your people one word in apprehension of that national crime and scandal, American chattel slavery. This obstinate silence, this seeming indifference on your part, reflects no credit on your faith and morals, and I trust they will not be persisted in." His rebuke was obviously not well received. John Taylor, who was to become the successor of Brigham Young as the church prophet, said, "I would not talk to him. I felt myself superior to such a mean, contemptible cur. This Greeley is one that supports the stealing of and the Underground Railroad. He's one of the prominent newspapers editors in the Eastern Country, and he is a poor, miserable curse." So there you see, my friends, what a sharp contrast we have here between, on one side, men who professed to have the exclusive call of prophets and to possess unique revelatory gifts from God, and on the other, regular people like you and me, whose only source of deep conviction lay with the God of the Bible and His words there. We just have to look at history to see that it proved Joseph Smith to be 100% wrong on what he said it was going to happen with American slavery and the abolition effort. But more importantly, what he wrote as a scripture about the curse of God being displayed on a person's dark complexion and about blacks being the seed of Cain and Ham is so wrong that even the modern LDS prophets are trying to disconnect themselves and the church from it. Can a true prophet give false revelation and still be true? What does the Bible say about prophecies from prophets that do not come true? Should we believe they are from God? But the prophet who presume to speak a word in my name that I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that same prophet shall die. And then God tells us how we can discern when someone is really a true prophet of his or not in the next verse. He says, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. So why am I using my time to be making videos like this? Is it to be attacking Joseph Smith and the church? No. The reality, my friend, is that he made some huge truth claims that require close examination, because he told his followers to trust him with their eternal destination. But he radically changed the biblical message of the gospel, distorting who the biblical Jesus Christ is and how someone can receive forgiveness of all their sins and be made right with God. He made up another gospel and another Jesus who cannot save anyone. If you are LDS, I want you to know that even if I do not know you personally, I care about you enough to be investing my time to share the biblical gospel with you. Do your own research about the church and study the Bible for yourself. Read the New Testament with fresh eyes, without all of the presuppositions of Joseph Smith's own interpretations of the Bible. Thank you for watching.